Hey there and welcome to Matt's Garage and part 5 of my Neoru build here, which if you haven't been following along, it's a 2000 Dodge Neon body on top of a 99 Subaru Forester platform. So I highly recommend checking out part 1 through 4 of the series so that you're all caught up. But we'll start off where we left off in part 4 with the bumper modifications. I just got to get over there through the flood zone here. I've got a bit of spring flooding going on in the shop. Happens every spring with the snow melt, and it's a lot worse this year because I wasn't able to plow the snow. So yeah, I got these little just 2x4s laid out everywhere so I have somewhere to walk. And then I've got this wood platform back here to walk on. You can see I've got the other fog light all done, and I'm just prepping the bumper up to paint everything, but I'm actually just cutting some 1 3/4 holes, 4 of them, no 6 of them actually, across the front here for a bit more airflow. Bit of a lower grill opening there. And you can see over here I've got that fog light installed, so I'm just going to get primer on all this. You can see I have all my cords and everything just held up with blocks of wood. I'm sure this is totally OSHA approved here. Now you may notice that the holes are not level, they kind of slope down to the middle. That's both for visual appearances and because there's an extra brace in the middle here that comes down a bit lower. So there we go. I'm kind of in a tight space, but I just wanted to try and get a view of the entire front end. This bumper was never made to be beautiful, but it's starting to take shape into what I've always envisioned it to be, what I've always planned for it, but it takes some time to get it there. Still not beautiful, but pretty awesome. Okay, well there we go. I've just been working on prepping up the bumper for primer all day here, and I welded up those little square holes. That's from when it used to be a Ford bumper. I've got those 6 holes across the front. There was some more square holes there. I welded it up, and I added a horn bracket right there. As I said, there's going to be no nuts and bolts on this car. Everything's got a welded nut so that it's easy to put together and apart. And then over here, another horn bracket, and you'll notice this one has 2 mounting points, and that's because I'm actually going to wire in the Chrysler horn as well. There's also a Subaru horn here. So there'll be 3 horns in total, and it should give it like a dual tone, and it should make people move out of my way. It's been a while since I did an update, but I've got everything prepped here. It probably doesn't look like I've actually done much, and that's why I didn't do an update, but I pretty well brought the whole bumper to bare metal, and just going over every little nook and cranny, and just, you know, rounding off edges, and you know, taking little burrs off, and we're gonna get a coat of primer on all of this now. Well, it's the next day here, and you can see all that paint's dried up, but this is what I used on the bumper here. Unfortunately, that's not what I used on the roof rack up there. I meant to use all the same paint, and I had a couple cans of flat green in the cupboard and grabbed the wrong stuff for the roof rack, so I'm going to have to respray that roof rack to match this, which is what the bulk of the paint I have is. I used 3 cans just doing this, so that's okay. I bought a bunch of it on clearance, so I'm pretty happy with how it looks and how it turned out. I spent a lot of time just going over this with some 80 grit, an 80 grit flap disc to get rid of all the grinding marks, and then I did a final sand with 120 grit, and you can see it's turned out really smooth. So I'll get all this unmasked and start fitting the fenders. That's next on the agenda. Well, there it is with all the tape off. I did a couple of touch-ups on the green, and I Even put the fog lights in. Still got to wire them up, of course, but I think they look pretty good. Well, okay then, water, just come on in. So there we go. I've got the front fenders kind of mounted. I got the front bolt in and the back end of them is taped up. You can see I've got that gap set there. Just under there I have to make a piece to catch these two holes. Okay, you can see my kind of a crude template that I created in here. It's got a bunch of steps and stuff in it. It's pretty complex. I'll get back with you when I get that fabbed up out of 18 gauge. Here you go, you can see I've got that cut out of the 18 gauge, and I always write fold on my fold lines, otherwise I end up cutting on them when I cut it out. So yeah, that's what I gotta do now, is put all those folds in it basically, and then drill the holes for the nuts there and weld those in. So you can see I'm just going to have to trim things a little bit to get that exactly 90 degrees. And I still have to weld a piece in here. I don't want to have an open gap there. And I've got to basically go over the whole thing and just clean it up and metal finish it a little bit. But it's roughed out now. So there we go, it's all complete there. Turned out pretty nice. Really all you're gonna see is just this flat edge here, so some might consider this extreme, but I decided to weld the fender to the door just temporarily here to hold the gap. And as you can see, I've got my piece bolted in here, so now I just have to fit it down to the car. So now that I have the fender in the right spot, I can manipulate my flange around basically until it matches up where I want it to. Well, there you go. You can see I've got that all in there. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Pretty much as I planned. So this end of it will be tied into the pillar here as I finish up this corner. But for now I got to get over to the other side and make that same piece for over here. And I also have to make a supporting piece for the front corner here, and of course for the back bogging edge down there. Okay guys, I gotta put a bunch of bends in that now. The problem is I've marked it off the same template as this side, but everything's opposite, so now I have to try and remember which way to bend everything so that it all lines up over on the right side of the car. So first I'll just true this all out flat, and then I'll start adding the bends into it. So there we have that pretty well roughed out there. I just have to make the bends in the middle there for that little step in it. And there we go, just a little fine tuning, and add my nut inserts, and should have it. Just a little update, I got that fender all in place there. You can see I still have the tabs welded on there like I did on the other side, and then I decided to just quickly get this antenna in here. You can see the old one up here for the neon wouldn't work out because there's bracing directly in line with it. So I had no choice but to use the Subaru one, and it's not exactly shaped right for the fender, so you can see I cracked the housing there a little bit, welding that in, trying to manhandle it to fit, and it's not the prettiest thing. I'm not done welding or grinding or anything yet, but it's not the prettiest fitment ever, but it's gonna work. And actually it's coming out at the wrong angle still, so I'm just going to put a bend in the in the mast. Again, I'm not building a show car here, so don't judge me for that. Now the hood fits very good on the front gap, which is no surprise because we used you know, the factory mount points. On the back here it is a little wide, which I'm not at all surprised by. I knew my doors were out a bit, and the reason for that is because basically the pillar down here is a little wider. Like the whole cowl structure of the Subaru here is wider than it was on Neon. The dash is wider, and I didn't want to obviously modify the dash, and I didn't want to hack up this pillar or hack up the doors because it's all structural. So the solution I came up with was to bend in the tops of the doors a little, which I did, so they line up to the roof nicely and will seal. And then because of that versus the hood, it's out about 1/4 inch per side on the gap here. So there we go, I got that all ground off and ready for filler. You can see what I mean by it not being too pretty. You can see I just finished up these 2 brackets for the mid part of the fender. I'll show you here. So they just mount up in there like that, just spot weld on, and then you can see I've got a nut weld on the back side there. So okay guys, I'm just working on these lower mounting points here. You can see I've got that midpoint all in there and everything lines up and it's nice and solid. So what I want to do here is just have like a hidden fastener. Normally these wrap down around the rocker panel and they fasten up underneath here, and they commonly seize up and they get hit by rocks and stuff and the heads get beat up. So what I'm going to do is I have this stud on a plate here that I spot weld it into the bottom of the fender here. It's got a little lip folded on the bottom to give some support, and basically I'm going to build a structure up in behind here that this will just come through a hole on and have a nut back in here, and that'll all be covered and protected with wheel liner here. Okay guys, little progress update here. You see how nice that gap is all the way down, and then I cleaned that up there where I had those spot welds, metal finished that all ready for body filler. So you can see that nice mount on the inside there. And then I up front here I made this little twisty bracket here, a 18 gauge. You can see I welded it right to the fender, and then I actually did use some sheet metal screws, some self-tapping screws to put it through the beam here. I just didn't want to make a big hole and weld a nut on here because it will change the structure of the beam. Also, now what I'm going to do is stick the hood down in here basically and weld the hood with little tabs like I did the fender to the door, and then I'm actually going to make up a little filler piece to go on the edge of the fender. From about here to here I got to add a little bit to it, about 1/4 inch. Now we're just going to grind a little paint off and weld some temporary tabs. You can see I cleaned up all the edges of the fenders here right down into the mounting flange, and I just got some little scraps of metal to join it together temporarily. I turned my welder down so it wouldn't really burn in, so I can remove them later. Okay, well I just got the hood just tacked in place with these scraps, and that holds it at the right level, and it's perfectly centered between the fenders right now. So this is the gap that I have to fill, And you can kind of see already that this is sloped like that. So it should just come straight down and fasten into that corner, and you won't hardly be able to tell even with the hood opening. Here you can see I got the left side done just along the top here. So it fits up to the hood nicely. Now I just got the hood lowered down so that I could get in here and just do this edge here. Okay, I'm just going to be grinding that weld, and I'm going to start out with 60 grit flap disc on my big grinder, and then I'll finish it off with a little die grinder with a 60 grit 2-inch flap disc. Here we go, all ready for body filler now. You can see I've just gone over everything and just made everything as smooth and as perfect as I can. Got all in there and ground all those spot welds down on the support piece that I made there. And coming over here it's the same thing. So I'm all ready for body filler on both sides. I wanted to show you guys this cool little trick. You see I've got to mount this hood up. So I've got to position the hinges, and the height is something that's a little hard, but the width is actually easy, because what I did is I just welded this little piece of angle iron in between the two hinges, and now when I take them off they're going to be connected in exactly the right position width wise anyways to match up to the hood. Here you can see what I meant. I've got the hinges just eyeball centered so far, but now they're going to sit there in one spot while I can sit here and measure this way and up and down. You can see it's not a very level area here where I have to ultimately mount them. I have to create a strong mounting plate in that area. Okay, you can kind of get an idea of what I'm doing here. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of things that are kind of interconnecting here. So I'm trying to fit the hood hinges, but they're interfering with the wiper drive down here, which is also not really in the right position and at the right angle to clean the window. And actually the second drive is down under the windshield, because the windshield curves out a lot more in the center than the Subaru one did. That's where it ended up being, is buried back here under the windshield. So I went in the back and grabbed this is a cowl cover off of a Neon, and you can see the mark from the rubber on the window, so I can tell exactly where it was. And what that does is position everything else for me, because this flat edge here is supposed to sit on top of this flat edge here, and then there's a seal that goes over both, and then they seal to the bottom of the hood. See this flat area on the hood here? That seals down to that lip as well. So I have to have everything in just the right position so that it will seal there. Otherwise you'll end up sucking engine bay fumes into the cabin of the car. Okay guys, so I have to create kind of a filler transition piece between this piece, which is the factory cowl on the Subaru, and that Neon piece that I had fitted in here. So what I'm doing is this is the roof off of 84 Mercury Grand Marquis. Actually, I ran out of Subaru hood material finally, so this is just 20 gauge sheet. It should work perfectly, and I'm actually going to cut on that paint edge along there. That should be about the right curvature, and then this is the exact this Sharpie line here follows this panel up here exactly. There we go, you can see how that panel fits in there now. I just got it clipped there for now. Here you can see I've got the transition panel mostly done. I'm just drilling the spot welds, and then of course I'll have to grind it all clean before I install it. I just wanted to show you guys this little trick real quick. Like, I've got to fit this piece onto there, you can see that instead of welding this piece to the car, I actually screwed it down to this piece of wood here. And what that does is hold it true, and now I can beat on it and finish forming it to fit up to here. I can use hammers and dollies on both sides. You see, I'm just going along and working it down and spotting it in and making sure that this lip stays flat and true as I go. There we go, and then cool it. So here we go, I just finished welding everything up. Just going around with the hammer and stretching all those ribs in and stuff so everything will seal up with the Flex Seal. So now I'm going to go around and just grind all those welds. And there that is, all ground up nice and pretty. Ready for paint and install. Here we go, I've just put the hood in place temporarily to show you how that fits up to the hood in there. Okay, I'm just trying to get my wiper drive organized here. You can see this is the factory Subaru wiper arm on there. I'm only going to have one wiper arm. I'm going to put a longer blade on it so it covers most of the windshield. But you can see the arms touching there, and it's not quite seated on the drive. So what we have to do is move this drive up about 3/4 of an inch. And if I can move it that way a little bit in the process, like kind of, I'm going to leave the linkage connected. I'm going to cut out around this drive hub here, and I'm just going to move it so that the linkage holds it in the right spot, if you know what I mean. Okay, I gotta give my compressor another break, but I'm actually going to take this drive hub out of here because I'm worried I'm cutting into it. I gotta cut really close to it down here to avoid messing up this drain. Gonna put a little drop of 3-in-1 oil on each of these. They look pretty dry and I don't want to risk breaking one. So I'm just gonna zap these out. Okay guys, so I've been at this over an hour because my air system's just not keeping up, and that's all I can get down in there with is the little die grinder there. So I have got it pretty well loose here. Just flex off the couple corners that are kind of holding it. Look at that. Unbelievably thick. Something like that. So I basically just have to fill in the gap there just to bring it up so that it will hit the windshield at the right angle and everything. So there we go, there's our drive plate there. So the important thing here is to keep this oriented right so that the swing is correct on the drive. So then basically this wiper is this wiper arm is the one we're going to use, and of course it's got a spring to it here, but you can see we basically need to bring that up to about there and on that kind of an angle. So we're just going to kind of get this in that position, and then we're going to have to test everything. What I've done here is I've just taken the spring tension out of the wiper arm. That's the like when you have it against the window, it's obviously on there with some spring pressure. So that's what I've done. I've straightened out the arm to the point where it would naturally sit on that window. Okay, so here we are. I went ahead and clearanced that lip in there, and I actually drew a line on here on the plate and a line on the arm to align them so I don't have to keep bringing it back there to orient it. And I've got that all bolted on in the right orientation. So now we're going to try and move it to where we need, and hopefully everything kind of clears. And then the thing is, I And this is very critical. The angle of this has to match dead on with the angle of the windshield. Otherwise, as it moves up in its swing, if it's going deeper, it'll put undue strain on the motor, and the arm will have to flex each sweep. In fact, I think it's going to be some trial and error where I actually have to weld this in, and then I have to power up the wipers and run this through a motion and make sure nothing binds, because this will be, you know, way too built into the car to change later if I get it wrong. You see, I can actually take my level, and if I'm real careful, I can come down on here, and then I can get a visual for how that slope is. I know you can't see all that on camera, but it actually goes up there really evenly. The level remains the same distance from the windshield the whole way up, and that's what we want. And all of this will be cut out after, but what I'm going to do is build this area in front first and do it properly. Then I can cut this scrap out and then build this all in. Well, what do you guys think of that? I just got busy with a little wire brush last night and some baby wipes and kind of cleaned everything in the engine bay up really good, including brushing all the aluminum to get the corrosion off and stuff. So we're going to get on with wiring here. Mainly what I have to do is hook up the neon lights. So I have all the pigtails from the neon, of course. I just have to wire it onto the end of the Subaru harness. Most of it actually is right here, and I already had turn signals hooked up to this harness before when I brought the car home. And then I know this is the headlights, and pretty sure that's the fog light, so I'll get to hook up that up to my new PF fog lights here. So I'm just gonna take a bit of a break from doing metal work right now and just go through and do all the wiring, get the radiator installed and the transmission cooler and all that sort of thing. So I don't know how much of this process I'm going to show, but basically I solder my wires. I don't believe in crimping. I use this rosin core silver solder there. Here's the headlight plug. I just put the neon headlight plug on the Subaru wires. Got my heat shrink on there, ready to slide over the solder joints now. I just had this clip holding the wires up so that there was no tension on the joints while I soldered them. This is the adhesive lined heat shrink here. I just got this kit off Amazon, but it seems really nice. I can see the adhesive coming out the end and everything, so, and they're color coded, so that's always nice. Okay, you can see how nicely that's turned out there. And then put this nice cover back over it. This was part of the Neon's factory harness. So now I'm just going to tape that little section and meet up with the Subaru's cover there, and all will be good. There we go. We've got a neon headlight plug on our Subaru wiring harness, and I've got the factory Subaru fog light plug because I was able to get the other end and put on my new fog light here. Unfortunately, I'm missing the one for the right side, so I went and found this a random plug off of a Ford, off an old Ford, and we'll wire that in there just so that we have some way of disconnecting it quickly without having to cut wires. Okay guys, you can see I actually had to extend the wires over on the right side here. They weren't quite long enough, but I got those all soldered together. I put the correct size heat shrink on this side and have it all ready to slide up over and seal those up. I messed up a little on the other side and put too big of a piece on there, and it didn't quite shrink enough, but I ran a whole new harness for my horn because that's what those blue wires down there are, because it wasn't long enough. And then you can see the Ford plug that I added down there for the fog light. So then we come around to the back here and you can see the harnesses are just cut off. There's actually one per side, and then all that big ball of wiring in the middle there, that's all Subaru stuff. So I gotta pretty well sort out from it what powers what, and then figure out what powers the same thing on the Neon and hook it all together like I did on the front. Okay guys, just a little update for you on the trunk area wiring. I've got everything figured out actually. I know where everything goes now. This one little plug had me stumped for a while, but luckily Aaron from 802 Garage was able to find a wiring diagram and figure out that that's actually for trailer package. For a tow package, there would be a little harness that would plug onto that and give you a trailer plug. So everything else you can see I've got labeled here, and I've got a lot of shortening to do and stuff to get everything laid out properly. Some of these wires route up to this harness and everything. Okay guys, you can see I've made quite a bit of progress here. I've got everything wired in except for the trunk light, and I just got to route and hook up the window defroster wires. I mean, they'll plug right into the Neon window from what I can see. And then the one other thing is the Subaru had the speakers in the back doors. The Neon has them in the parcel shelf here under the glass. So I just have to actually run speaker wires to here from the doorpost location up there. That's probably the biggest thing I gotta do, but I was able to eliminate the whole Neon harness that went to this side because the Subaru one crosses over on the rear panel here. You can see here I was able to install the factory Subaru license plate lights with I drilled a hole there and put the grommet there. I know that looks like it's factory and it's been there forever, but I swear I just put it there 20 minutes ago. Just a real quick wiring update guys. I'm just doing a quick light test. Actually did one the other night and I had messed up and I had one wire backwards, so I just fixed that. My tail lights are on right now. License plate light is on, and the brake lights all work. Third brake light on the trunk lid works, and this awesome trunk light with the switch works. I did that on purpose so I would have a switch. That way when I'm working out of my trunk I can just switch it off and save the battery. And that goes out when the latch comes down. That all works. And as you can see, the headlights work, high beams work, reverse lights work. I've got some front lights that don't work, but that's because I have some grounds that aren't hooked up right now. Not that concerned about that right now. I just wanted to get it so I could actually wrap the rear harness, and I can now. I've got all the problems in the rear of the car solved. Everything seems to be working except my windshield wiper. That's the one bad thing here. That's why I wanted to hook my wires up so I could test it. And the angle and the swing is perfect. As you can see, it's up here on the window, but it's limited out there right now. Unfortunately, I don't have a light over here, but the linkage down in there, it bound up right here. There's a piece of metal. And so I actually have to cut this back out to access it. Cut that metal out and then weld this in exactly how it is, because it does work. The angle works. So here we go. I'm just, I unwrapped the whole harness so that I could pull these unneeded wires back out of it. So I just pulled them back to here and then put some heat shrink on the ends to seal them, and now they'll be taped back into the harness. I'm going to completely tape this end to end. You can see I've already started over there. And yeah, pretty boring, so I'm not really recording, but it's getting done. Okay guys, I'm all done wiring the back of the car, 100% here. I've got everything wrapped and protected and strapped up out of the way. You can see I took a lot of extra time to put all this casing over. It all got completely wrapped first, and then I put this casing over everywhere so that, you know, when I'm loading things in and out of the trunk, if something heavy lands on it or whatever, it's not going to pinch it and go through the wires. This, of course, rubs every time you drop the trunk. That's why those wires are all kind of suspended in the corner, because you can see as I drop the trunk lid, they've all got to move and stretch. So I've got that just so they stretch just enough, but they don't have a big baggy area that's going to get caught and stuff. You can see the harness comes through here. This is for the seatbelt sensor, and I haven't plugged these in yet, but this is all, the harness is all up here now for the speakers, for the defrost, and these are for the trunk light there. In part 6 I'll be fastening this fire extinguisher up into the corner of the trunk here. It just came with one of those plastic strap mounts for it, so I'm going to make up some sort of quick release metal bracket that will hold up off-road and stuff, that I don't have to worry about this thing breaking free. This car's already had one fire extinguisher go off inside of it, and it made quite a mess. You really want to avoid having that happen, let me tell you. Okay guys, well thanks a lot for tuning in to part 5 of my Neoru build series. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss part 6. And we should get it running in part 6, I hope. And exciting things to come even after that. This car is going to continue to evolve into the future, so it's never going to be truly done as a project. I have so many plans left for it, but we're getting really close to actually having it back on the road, driving it, and that's pretty exciting here. So make sure you're subscribed so you can follow along. Make sure you're staying healthy and enjoying life, I guess.